Okay, so I'd like to go ahead and introduce our April guest speakers. Very excited to have Carla Bailo, who's the CEO of the Center for Automotive Research, and Terry Barclay, CEO of Inforum. And we're going to be reviewing, so they have actually two book publications with SAE, but publishing today the ebook version, not the print version. The print version is coming next month, but the ebook version of The Road Forward, which is more conversations with top women in the automotive industry. Welcome, ladies. Thank you so much for volunteering your time to speak with us today.
Great to be here. Thanks for asking us.
I'm actually going to share out a poll. Our guest speakers had a poll for those of you joining us for the live event, and I'm going to go ahead and share out an action button for you to take a look at their brand new book publication. Please certainly do so. As I mentioned earlier, it's just going to open in a brand new tab. It won't deviate you away from the live event. And I'm also going to push out a handout, which will give you more information about the contributors for this publication. Now, I personally have a bunch of questions for the two of you, but I will make sure I navigate out to the chat window and see if there's additional questions from our attendees. But I'm interested, let's go ahead and hop into it. Your second book, which is coming out today, the ebook version, is a follow-up to The Road to the Top is Not on the Map, which was published, I believe, in 2019. I'm curious, what caused you to want to do this second title, The Road Forward?
So I'll tackle that one first. You know, I think we all underwent just a huge amount of change a little over a year ago, a year and a month ago to be specific, when, you know, we were all sent home, and how it caused our lives to become much different, the interaction of work and family, how it caused communication in the workforce to be different, how it may have changed the way you managed your career and in your discussions with your mentors and your sponsors. All of that was suddenly gone and needed to be changed. Also, the effects that were happening globally related to social equity and sustainability, climate change, all of this was new and sudden since we had worked with the ladies on the first book. So when Sherry reached out to us, to do a second version, we felt the time was right.
Terry, did you have anything to add to that?
No, Carla said it well, and the only thing that I would add is just we can't underestimate the importance of role models, and there's an incredible talent pipeline issue in technology-focused fields, and the need to elevate and celebrate more diverse voices if we're going to be successful in attracting that next generation. And so the book is an incredible opportunity to get to know 70 more incredible leaders.
Would you be able to emulate for us what the key differences are between the first publication, The Road to the Top, and The Road Forward, coming out this month?
Well, in the first book, we talked with 35 top women executives in the industry and really focused on leadership lessons and their leadership journey. In this book, I think Carla did a wonderful job really emphasizing what was different. And what was different was the stress and the impact of the pandemic. But the positive side of that coin is, what did we learn? We had a once in a lifetime opportunity to learn from a situation like that. And so we wanted to capture those lessons, and we wanted to hear about the kinds of topics that really are gaining prominence, and those are issues of sustainability and issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which are front and center now for so many companies. They're certainly front and center for the investment community that buys the stock of those companies. Right. So we all have to get better at it.
Yeah, I think with the overriding theme, in both books, let's hear from the inside voice. many times when you're the only woman at the table or the only woman in the executive team, it's really, really hard to find those opportunities to connect and to hear and to learn and to chat. And especially in, with the second book in these days of COVID, where you really don't, if you didn't have time before, you really don't have time now, to try to make time for these virtual chats. Again, to hear that you're not alone, that other people are facing similar things, and this is what they're doing to help. I think, all of us going through this, we need to hear what others are doing and how they're being resilient and staying strong. And that's also a big focus of the second book, is that resiliency. And how do you keep your strength? How do you keep your enthusiasm? How do you, some of the interesting things were, people saying when the pandemic first hit, I stopped doing everything. I just, kind of lived in my kitchen like I am now, and eating every 5 minutes. And, I forgot about that. I used to go to the gym after work or in the morning. But after 2 or 3 months, they said, whoa, I have to get my act back together and, change this. But just seeing, hey, I wasn't the only one who did this, it
Right.
really helps.
Yeah, and I think that I understand that both books focus on women leaders in the automotive industry, but I think many of us, regardless of what sector we're in, can probably relate to many of those stories. So you mentioned the contributors for both publications. Are there any returning contributors to this new book coming this month, and anyone in particular you're excited about?
Well, Carla and I are diplomatic, so we're not going to call out specific names because no, truly, all of the stories are interesting. But as I said, there were 35 in the first book, and there are 70 in the second. So we were able to go a little bit more deeply. We have a really broad range of professions. To your point, Angela, there are people in this book who have already had careers way beyond the automotive industry. They're just currently in the automotive industry. So the lessons that they have are applicable much more broadly.
Yeah, diversity went through, not just, even though most of them are automotive today, some of them are corollary automotive. So we have some academics, we have some from startups, we have, some in nonprofits. So it's this diversity of thought, because when you talk about diversity, yes, it is related to gender, it's related to nationality, but it's also related to thought and the different segments of automotive. So as Terry rightly said, when you talk with somebody from purchasing versus somebody from manufacturing versus somebody from engineering, from HR, the perspectives are all different and the thoughts are different. And I think that's what makes the read interesting.
Did you come across, either of you, any surprising responses with this new publication?
Well, I'll say the one that surprised me, I don't know if Carla's is the same or not, but if you've been paying attention to the media, you've heard all of the pretty grim news about the pandemic's disproportionate impact on women. And I think that many of us looked at that and thought, well, that might be certain segments of the overall workforce, like the hospitality industry, or, things that aren't where I work. The thing that surprised me was, and that I was grateful for, was the candor of the women featured in the book, talking about the stresses, very candidly about the stresses that they faced, and a couple of admissions that there was a time or two when they thought it was too much and they thought about exiting. I thought that was a brave admission and a useful one. To Carla's earlier point, none of us are in this alone, and our reactions are not unique.
Yeah, and I agree 100%. There were some serious executives or high-level executives that said we had conversations as a family about dropping out of the workforce because it just got to be too much. And I can't imagine probably women are alone there, but we still know that women bear the brunt of not only work but home. And those with that extended family, sometimes that was helpful and sometimes it wasn't, which was another big surprise. Some people had grandparents that moved back in with them, and they said it was like adding 2 more children, to their household. So, it can be a help, but it also can be a real disruption. The other thing that I found really interesting, and I've tried to change my own behavior as a result, is a lot of the ladies said, regardless how I look, what I have on, I always turn my camera on because it shows I'm engaged. It shows I'm listening. And, since I read that, it's interesting. I now put mine on. So now my team has seen me straight off the treadmill, no makeup, after a horrible dental surgery, looking whatever. But, in this world, nobody really cares. And I think it's been this levelizer of playing field that we really haven't seen in a long, long time.
Yeah, and I think to each of your points about some of the responses, or I guess, some of the surprising responses, I noticed I asked a similar question in our February guest speaker segment, which was Flight Paths to Success with Rhonda Waldhall and Brenda Mitchell. And they both agreed that one of the responses they were surprised at, or one of the questions, was if you cried at work. And the candidness in some of those responses as well was surprising for them. And I appreciate it. I actually have a copy of that. No, I certainly have a copy of this book. I appreciate a lot of that candidness, and it's certainly something I think we can relate to.
Yeah, that's a great example too, because it's always been a sign of weakness if you cry at work, or, I think we as women, we walk this fine line, right? If you cry and show your sensitive side, that's not good. If you're aggressive and you're determined and you kind of fight for what you want, that's not good either. So, we need to get rid of these perceptions about what's good and what's not good and just be who we are.
Yeah, 100%. So before I move forward on my questions, let me look at the chat window because we did get some things. And Sherry is with us. So she said, when I read the manuscript, it hit home for me that I am not alone. Even women in executive positions struggle balancing family and COVID. 100%. Let's see. I did see a question here. Great to hear experience from women leaders. Will you please let us know how to how to engage ourselves in this COVID situation? I'm assuming that means more in terms of your advice and engaging maybe in mentorship and leadership opportunities in a COVID situation. Do you have any advice on that?
Go ahead, Carla.
When I hear this, I always recommend a few things. One is, if they have a mentorship program or some sort of group within their company, get involved in that. But secondarily, there are a lot of organizations, and Terry has a great one in Forum that does, offer webinars and chats and great sessions that you can, break out in groups and talk about, these challenges that we're facing. AWAF, Automotive Women's Alliance Foundation, is another one. Just start attending some of these free webinars and making those connections. Because they're really great support groups.
Yes, and I would say the other, and it was a little bit of a surprising thing from the book, is, how do you keep growing your professional network during when everyone's working from home and you're all virtual? I would say one of the top takeaways for me is the importance of doing that. It takes a little bit more effort and focus, but it is shocking the resources that are out there. And just as an example, that are very effective online for meeting new people and continuing to grow your professional network. In Forum, we've seen a huge surge in our membership and in participation at virtual events because people are hungry to find ways to continue. And I'm sure that's true for SAE and for CAR. I think we're all seeing those trends. And so you've got to put yourself into the equation. You've got to put your future growth into the equation and not just have the mentality of I'm just hanging on the best I can. You've got to find a way to carve out some time to look forward.
Yeah, and I think, in these days too, with so many of the executives not traveling like they used to, most of them were on the road 5 days a week, why not take a stab at just reaching out and seeing if they'd be willing to chat with you for a little bit and give you some career advice and guidance? It's a good time to try, and there's no harm.
Absolutely. No, that's excellent advice. So I'd like to shift a little bit and learn more about each of you. What inspired you each to work on that first book publication in 2019?
Want me to go this time? And okay. I entered the automotive industry in 1978. And that's when I started university and graduated in 83. But I went to Kettering, so it was a co-op school. So I was working from 78 onwards. And actually, I started working on the assembly line before I even went to university. And the things that I experienced and having the lack of mentors is something that has given me personal drive throughout my entire career to do exactly the opposite. And, you know, as I rose up through GM at first, then through Nissan for many years, I always had I always took the opportunity to mentor as many people as I could. I often had 14 or 15 mentors and mentees in a year, which honestly, I learned as much from them as I hope they learned from me. But just to be able to provide that place where people can go and try to get information, to try to help them in their career, because there aren't a lot of people in your same shoes that look like you and are going through some of the struggles that you're going through. So it's very personal for me. I would love to say the numbers are getting better in the automotive industry. Unfortunately, they're not. And, you know, this is another initiative that, you know, we're working on separately, and just had a webinar about that recently too. But, you know, how we can continue to improve the diversity in the industry, you know, just based on my background and some of the things that I went through early in my career, the more I can help, the better.
No, well said, Carla. And really very similar for me. You know, data is powerful. And so I remember sitting down back in 2008 when we were in sort of the mother of all recessions and companies were laying people off right and left, sitting down with a top woman executive from a tier 1 supplier and talking over breakfast about how we knew that the mother of all talent shortages was right around the corner. And we knew that we needed to begin then seriously building to and starting a series of work streams to try to, you know, grow the talent pipeline. Not only was it imperative for the financial health of the companies, but it has always perplexed me. You know, women are 60% of college graduates. They are, of course, far smaller percentage of the engineering graduates. We know those numbers. But, you know, when you're in a global fight for talent, it seems like you want everybody at the table and you want to position your company as a great place for top talent to choose. And we know that a huge part of that is elevating and celebrating the women role models that are out there so that we can change the image of our industries to ones that are the very best, most exciting places for top talent to work, especially women.
Yeah, and let me just append a little bit. We know that 65% of car buying decisions are made by females, and who better to design and work on that product and work on the sales process and be involved in the dealer process than those who are purchasing. So that, you know, that in those companies or those dealerships that have taken this to heart and now have a larger presence of women on their development team or in their sales office, they're reaping the rewards. So it affects your bottom line.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious, what got the two of you working together on that first book?
Well, I'll be honest. This is always my honest answer. You know, Sherry reached out to me And those of you who know me know that I'm the CEO of the Center for Automotive Research, but I'm also on several other boards. And I just said, this is a great idea, but I can't do it alone. And I know the best partner I can ask. So then I reached out to Terry. So that's you know, my story. And Terry thankfully said yes.
No. And Carla, we've become quite the team, having done 2 books together. But I have to tell you, I mean, you know, we're both just passionate about making sure that this industry has the best talent that it needs. And so we've come together about a lot of things. I mean, Inforum's Automotive Next Industry Group, for example, very laser-like focused on talent. So we reached out to Carla and the Center for Automotive Research about helping to staff the student event that they do up at MBS every year. And so our organizations had been working together. And so we just have continued to extend and expand the partnership.
Okay. All right. How did you two first meet?
I think it was at a meeting.
It was at an Inforum event.
At an
Automotive Next at Deloitte and Touche.
Yep.
I remember well.
We won't say how long ago that was, Carla, right?
I know I had a lot less gray hair and a lot fewer wrinkles.
So, all right, any plans for a third book, and would it be on a similar topic? I mean, hopefully you're going to work together on another project, but I'm curious if you're planning a third book on this similar topic.
Well, we'd like to get the second one launched.
Yeah.
And, I know that we both have ideas that we haven't had a chance to put our heads together about, but I just have to give a plug for Sherry Nigam and SAE. You know, the thought of, if you would have told me back in 2019 that there would be books and not just 1 but 2, I would have laughed at you. But Sherry and her team just make this process so easy. And so if there's anyone listening or participating today who's thinking about this, I just can tell you SAE just does a fabulous job.
Yeah, indeed.
That was my next question.
No, I have to second that 100%. Had it not been, you know, for Sherry's work and the rest of the team helping with the editing and getting us through the process, which is quite rigorous, and keeping us on track, hey, you know, you got to do this by this date, it would have been much tougher. So it was just excellent. And, you know, when we think about another book, this disruption's far from over. I mean, electrification, ride sharing, all of these new avenues are opening in the mobility space. And then, you know, what about young professionals? You know, do we need to hear more from them? We've got a lot of the seasoned vets. We have a little bit of younger people in the book, but not necessarily the ones starting out. Maybe we need to get that voice out there too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I hear that a lot working with Sherry. She definitely selects some really amazing topics, and I hear she's great to work with. So it's nice to hear that for sure. Before, I think I saw another question come in. Have you both looked at automotive technology education? I don't know, Lana, maybe you can elaborate. Was that more for a topic to focus on in a publication or more from a professional development standpoint? But if either of you want to elaborate on any of those. It says training technicians. Okay.
We haven't looked at that side of the business. I know it's very, very important, and even more important as we go into electrification and automation. So it's an opportunity. It's a different segment of the workforce, but nonetheless very important.
Excellent. Did you have anything to add to that, Terry? No? Okay. Now, you guys had asked me to push out a poll. Did you consider leaving your job last year during the pandemic? And the people that did answer, so we had 2 answers of yes, 3 answers of sometimes, and 13 answers of no. Are you surprised by that response?
I would say a little bit. The national data says that 40% of women thought about leaving their jobs, or significantly, I guess, or significantly dialing back their careers, you know, taking a step back, or really retreating and sort of to focus on everything that they had to do. So that's a pretty shocking number. It was from some McKinsey research that was released. So I'm glad to hear it, though.
Yeah, for sure. Probably it depends on who's asked the question, but definitely we must have a lot of resilient women in the audience here today. And, you know, hopefully, you know, when we go into the next stage post-pandemic, when who knows if you'll be returning or it'll be a hybrid, that's going to bring a whole nother set of issues that will be interesting as we navigate that new wave, so to speak.
Right. Okay. I don't see any more questions for the two of you. Is there any, I know we talked a little bit about advice in terms of mentorship and leadership in these challenging times. Anything else that you would like to leave the attendees with?
I think the one thing I'd like to just mention is everybody said, you know, without doubt, make sure you think about yourself, because often yourself comes last in these days. You know, the family, work, and between that, there can be no time. But if you don't take time for yourself, your health, be it physical or mental, is at risk. And if your health becomes at risk, then your job and your family are at risk. So make sure that you carve out that time, turn off your phone, turn off Slack or whatever your instant messaging is. Designate time on your calendar, lunchtime, family time. I know that those who are your supervisors, they will respect that. And it's really, really important to help with you, again, with your health, because without that, the rest of it doesn't matter.
My couple of takeaways would be really, first and foremost, the one that we already discussed, which is the absolute importance of continuing to invest in your network, in growing and developing your network. Most opportunities in life, whether they're personal or professional, come through that network. And just like as Carla mentioned, we tend to sideline ourselves. I think that when we're busy and stressed, we sideline or back burner our network growth. So really give some thought about what concrete steps you can take to continue to grow that network. Pardon me. And the other thing is, I don't know, I know it's going to seem like all touchy-feely and strange, but a number of the leaders that we talked to really emphasized the importance of the human touch, of really making room to connect with the people that you work with about what's going on with them and their lives, and try to do that in a way that meets their needs. And if I can give you one really quick example that I found amazing. There was one leader who she was finding that the people who were having, in some ways, the toughest time during this remote work were the younger single people who were living alone. And she set up times, and it seemed like every connection you had with people was formal, that was a scheduled meeting, and, you were on and off at the exact time. She actually set up some times to work together over using a video connection, not a meeting, not working on the same task, but parallel processing, almost recreating a cube environment where you're working away on your task. And then every once in a while, hey, did you see this? Or what'd you think of it? That kind of, she scheduled brief moments like that. And the response was extraordinary. Just to try to recreate a virtual opportunity for informal connections. What a creative solution that,
Yeah.
you know, if you described it to me, I would have said, well, that's weird. But you know, try stuff. Try.
No, I agree.
Yeah, we
Absolutely.
lament about losing the water cooler discussions, and I mean, what a perfect way. You're not sitting in someplace totally isolated that way. At least it doesn't feel that way.
Yeah, absolutely. It does look like there's one last question since we have a minute here. Any advice on how to improve your network or how to begin developing this network? I speak as a PhD student. So that's great. We have some students in the audience, young professionals.
Well, I would say join a professional organization and don't just sign up for the membership.
Right.
Get involved. It's like anything in life, you get out of it what you put into it. And there are many excellent professional organizations out there to join. So look at the options, find the one that seems to be a good fit for you, and jump in.
Totally agree. Just seek it out, join, but join a few events. And a lot of them now are offering their events for free. So before you decide which one, go to a few for free. See if they take questions from anybody and answer them. You know, get the atmosphere, get the temperature, and see if it's right.
And then follow up, you know, if there are people, Carla, I think you mentioned this earlier, you know, if there are people that are involved that you want to meet, send them a note and see if they'll meet you for a virtual coffee. I find people to be incredibly willing to do that. You know, just give it a shot.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and some people are even willing to, you know, do outside walks, that kind of thing. I've done a few, masked but safely, but
yeah, of course. No, that's excellent advice, and also I see Dean mentioned member connection. I mean, that is an excellent way to start. SAE member connection is an excellent way to start. If you're not familiar with it, it's available on our .org website. And we're going to have Kelly McCann in a few minutes here to talk about SAE events, but there's definitely a ton of free events, lots of information. I would encourage you to certainly browse the SAE website for some of that for sure. And Sherry Nagam, our publisher for SAE Books, she did share out her email. If anybody's interested in publishing a book, reach out to Sherry. As you can see, she does an excellent job and she's great to work with for that content. All right, well, thank you so much. And congratulations again on your second book publication. I hope to have you back for your third one. But thank you so much. I really appreciate it. If anybody has additional questions for Carla and Terry, please post them in the chat window. I'll make sure I get those to them, and definitely take a look at their new publication, The Road Forward. The ebook came out today, and the paper publication's next month, correct?
Yes.
May 19th.
May 19th. Perfect.
Pretty sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks.
Moving